My name is Tom Harrington, and I'll never forget the night my wife told her friends he doesn't get to decide where I go or who I'm with. They all laughed, and I just stood there holding a plate of cold potato salad, feeling something in my chest crack like old timber. 3 days later, after her little weekend away, she called me 16 times before I finally picked up. But I'll get to that. First, you need to understand how we got there. I was born and raised in Davenport, Iowa. Spent most of my adult life working maintenance for the school district. Nothing glamorous but honest work, steady hours, and it helped me put food on the table for more than 25 years. My wife Lynn worked in medical billing at a clinic over in Bettendorf. We'd been married 22 years. We weren't perfect, but we were steady, or at least that's what I thought. Through most of our marriage, Friday nights were for fish fry at VFW Post 828. Sundays were for church at St. Mark's. Summers were Hy-Vee barbecues in the backyard. Nothing fancy, just normal Midwestern comfortable life. But somewhere in the last year, Lynn started drifting. It began small, staying out later after work, saying she and her co-workers were just decompressing. I didn't think much of it at first. Everybody needs to blow off steam. But then it became 2 nights a week, then 3. She changed her perfume, started dressing like she did in her 30s, and began spending more time scrolling on her phone than talking to me. I'd ask how work was, and she'd give me short answers like I was interrupting something. She started keeping her phone face down on the counter, even when it wasn't buzzing. When I'd walk into the kitchen, she'd stop mid-sentence during a call, lower her voice, and say, "I'll call you back." Not an ounce of explanation. The moment everything shifted came on a warm June Saturday in our backyard. Lynn had invited a group of her coworkers over for a barbecue. I was grilling burgers, trying to be polite, trying to be the good host. They were all younger than us, late 30s, early 40s wine drinkers who liked to talk too loudly about office drama I didn't care about. I carried a tray of patties over to the table where they were laughing about weekend plans. One of them asked Lynn if she was going somewhere again soon. Lynn waved her hand at me and said, "Oh, please. Tom doesn't get to decide where I go or who I'm with." The whole table erupted, even Lynn. She laughed like she was auditioning for a different life. And I felt something burn inside me, rage, shame, humiliation. But I didn't let it show. I just forced a little smile and said, "Burgers are ready." But inside I was shaking. Not from anger, though there was plenty of that, but from something deeper. Something like grief. Later that night, after everyone left and the yard was quiet again, I sat alone at the kitchen table staring at my wedding ring. The clock over the stove hummed. The street outside was silent. I turned the ring between my fingers and realized it didn't feel like a promise anymore. It felt like a weight. I thought just for a moment about ripping it off and throwing it across the room. I imagined it clattering against the fridge, sliding under the stove. I imagined shouting, slamming a cabinet, anything to make the ache stop. But instead I sat there and whispered to myself, she laughed at me in front of everyone. And somehow that humiliation cut deeper than the suspicion of cheating ever could. Anger would have been easy. Anger burns fast. Humiliation stays. The next few days were quiet, but not in a peaceful way. Lynn was distracted, glued to her phone, smiling at messages she wouldn't let me see. When she finally announced she was going on a girls' weekend to Galena, Illinois, the lie was thin enough to see daylight through it. "Oh," I asked, "who's going?" She shrugged. "Just some of the girls from work. You don't know them." Which was funny considering half of them had been in our backyard a week earlier. I nodded like a man who didn't know any better, even though my stomach churned in a way I couldn't ignore anymore. That night, lying in bed beside her, listening to her breathe like nothing was wrong, I felt a mix of heartbreak and clarity. If she was truly gone from us, from me, then I needed to face it. Not with shouting, not with begging, but with something steadier, something smarter. Before dawn, I got out of bed, made myself a pot of Hy-Vee breakfast blend coffee, and sat at the table again. And I made a decision. I wasn't going to confront her. I wasn't going to try to win her back. I wasn't going to lose my dignity to someone who'd already thrown hers away. I whispered into the quiet kitchen, "If she wants freedom, she'll have it." That was the moment everything changed. By the time Lynn walked out the door with her weekend bag, smiling at her phone, not at me, I wasn't the same man who held a plate of potato salad while being laughed at in his own backyard. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't ask where she was going. I didn't try to stop her. I just watched her walk away. And in that moment, without knowing it, she handed me all the power I needed. When Lynn pulled out of the driveway that Friday afternoon, I stood at the window and watched her taillights disappear down our quiet Davenport street. The early summer sun lit up the maple trees, and for a moment I wondered how many times I'd watched her leave without really seeing her go. This time I saw everything. I didn't follow her. I didn't check her location. I didn't text her to have fun. I just let the silence settle over the house like dust in a room nobody visits anymore. And then I got to work. The first thing I did was call my old friend Rick Stanton, a retired sheriff's deputy, who taught me more about patience and timing than any man alive. We met at the Village Inn off Elmore Avenue. He was already in a booth sipping coffee, flipping through a newspaper like it was 1998 again. He looked up at me the moment I slid into the booth. "You look like you've swallowed a handful of nails," he said. I let out a breath I'd been holding for weeks. Lynn's gone for the weekend, and she didn't leave alone. Rick didn't nod, didn't gasp, didn't ask who. He just set the newspaper aside and said, "All right, then let's make sure you protect yourself." That was one thing about Rick he never judged. He never said, "I told you so." He just dealt with reality head on. "You want to catch her in the act?" he asked. "No," I said immediately. "I'm done trying to keep her. I just want my dignity." Rick smiled at that, one of those small, proud smiles old men give when a younger man finally understands a hard truth. "Then the first thing you do," he said, "is separate your assets. Quietly, legally, cleanly." He laid out a simple plan, not vindictive, not dramatic, just smart. And for the first time in months, I felt steady again. After breakfast, I drove straight to Davenport Community Credit Union. The lobby smelled like fresh carpet and copier toner. A young teller barely older than my daughter helped me open an account in my name only. She didn't ask why. She didn't need to. People move money all the time. Life happens. I transferred only what was legally mine. Nothing sneaky, nothing reckless, just self-protection. Walking back to my truck, I felt a strange mixture of grief and clarity tighten in my chest. I sat behind the wheel for a minute, staring through the windshield at nothing in particular. And then I turned my wedding ring again. For years it had meant commitment, partnership, home. Now it felt like an artifact dug out of the river. Something that once had meaning, but had been buried too long to recognize. I whispered into the empty truck. "When did we stop being on the same side?" My voice broke a little. Grief is funny like that. It hits hardest when nobody's around. I wiped my eyes with the back of my hand and started the engine. My next stop was Angela Morales, a family attorney in Bettendorf. Her office was inside a converted house that still smelled like old wallpaper glue. She greeted me with a firm handshake and a kind smile. I told her everything without embellishing, without dramatic pauses. She listened quietly, nodding only when necessary. When I finished, she said, "Tom, you're doing the right thing by staying calm. Iowa is a no-fault state. You don't need to prove anything ugly. You just need to make sure every step you take is deliberate and legal. No lectures, no sermons, just clear guidance." She continued, "You don't have to file today, but you can prepare everything. When the moment comes, you'll be ready." I left her office feeling steadier, but emotionally scraped raw. Not because of the legal talk, but because of the reality this was really happening. Driving home across the I-74 bridge with the Mississippi River glinting under the sun, a wave of sadness hit me so hard I had to grip the wheel tighter. I whispered I thought we had more time. My throat tightened. It wasn't anger this time. It was the mourning of a life I thought we were still living together. The life I worked for. The life I believed in longer than she did. That night I walked into the bedroom and saw her side of the bedphone charger gone, lotion bottle half full, her pillow still dented from the night before. I sat on the edge of the mattress and let the weight of it all settle. I remembered the early years road trips to Galena movie nights, the way she used to rest her head on my shoulder when she was tired. And now she couldn't even look at me without irritation. Before I drowned in those memories, I stood up and forced myself back into motion. I went outside, climbed a step stool, and adjusted the driveway camera. A basic security model pointed toward the front of the house. Legal, non-invasive, nothing that crossed any lines. But enough to know when she came home, and with whom. It was nearly midnight when I saw headlights in the distance and moved toward the window. I didn't hide. I didn't pretend. I just watched. A silver Chevy Tahoe pulled up to the curb, the same one I'd seen at Lynn's workplace a couple times. The same one driven by Caleb, one of her co-workers. I watched through the camera feed as she stepped out giggling, brushing her hair back in a way she used to do when we were dating. She looked happy, not guilty, not conflicted. Happy. And all I could think was, some things don't belong to you anymore. She didn't even look at the house before hopping back into the Tahoe for a moment, maybe grabbing something, maybe saying goodbye. When she finally pulled her suitcase from the back seat, the Tahoe drove off without hesitation. I didn't open the door for her. I didn't turn on a light. I didn't speak a word. Instead, I reached for my phone and texted Rick. Me, it's confirmed. Rick. All right, I'll give her the documents tomorrow. What she does with them is up to her. That was important. Rick didn't force anything. He didn't manipulate anyone. He just handed Caleb's wife the truth. And she chose what to do with it. Back inside, I packed a small duffel with essentials, clothes, medicine, important papers. Then I drove to a U-Haul facility on River Drive and rented a small storage locker, not because I planned to run, but because sometimes you need a place to breathe. As I locked the metal door behind me, I whispered, I won't be caught unprepared again. By the time I drove home, the sky was turning gray with early morning light. Birds were waking up. Davenport was coming alive. But my marriage had never felt more dead. Lynn slept late the next morning, which didn't surprise me. She always slept well when her conscience was clear, or when she convinced herself it was. The house felt strangely calm, like everything inside it knew something was coming. Even the refrigerator hummed differently. I made coffee, the same Hy-Vee breakfast blend I'd bought for years, but it didn't taste the same. Nothing does when you're living in the last chapter of a life you thought would last forever. Around 10 a.m., she finally walked into the kitchen. Her hair was still slightly messy from last night. Caleb's Tahoe headlights had shown enough for me to recognize that look. She poured herself a cup of coffee, without acknowledging me, scrolling through her phone like I was the ghost in the room, and she was haunting me instead of the other way around. Morning, I said. She shrugged. Yeah. Not good morning, not even eye contact, just yeah. A single syllable that said everything. She didn't mention the weekend. Didn't explain why Caleb's Tahoe had been in our driveway. Didn't bother inventing a lie. She simply didn't care enough to pretend anymore. And that hurt more than anything. She left for work around noon. No goodbye, no see you later. Just grabbed her bag and walked out the door. The moment her car disappeared, I exhaled long and slow, the kind of exhale you make before lifting something heavy or letting something go. I grabbed my notebook, the same worn leather one I used for maintenance logs at the school district, and wrote 2 words. It's time. That day was not about anger. It was about preparation. Quiet, steady preparation that felt like cleaning out a room before repainting it. I started by documenting the house. Not out of spite, out of necessity. Photos of every room, every piece of furniture, every shared item. Legal, clean, methodical. Then I sorted my clothes and packed another small bag. Not everything. Just enough that if I needed to leave quickly, I wouldn't have to think twice. Shirts, jeans, toiletries, personal documents, a couple old baseball caps. The essentials of a man rebuilding his life. That afternoon, I visited U-Haul again. The same storage locker. I placed the bag inside along with a few personal belongings I didn't want to leave behind, old fishing tackle, a stack of family photos, my father's tool belt. It was strange how quiet the metal room was. No windows, no sounds of traffic, just a concrete floor, metal walls, and me. I sat on a small folding chair inside the locker and let myself feel everything I'd been avoiding. The grief, the embarrassment, the sting of being left behind emotionally while still technically married. And the humiliation of that backyard barbecue replayed again, clearer this time. Her friends laughing at me. Her laughing the loudest. That was the moment she left the marriage, long before Caleb's Tahoe ever showed up. After a while, I locked the unit and left. The Mississippi River winked through the trees as I drove back toward town. I rolled down the window and let the wind cool the ache behind my eyes. I wasn't running away, I was getting ready. The next stop was Mrs. Carlson, our elderly neighbor, who'd lived on the street since before I was born. She saw everything. She also knew when to keep her mouth shut. When she answered her door, she smiled gently, like she already sensed something was wrong. Tom, honey, you look tired. Come in. I sat at her kitchen table, the same place she'd given me lemonade when I was 9, and scraped my knee on her sidewalk. I need to ask a favor, I said quietly. She nodded before I even explained. Is this about Lynn? She didn't say it with judgment, just understanding. Yes, I said. Just keep an eye on the house for a little while. Nothing major. Just let me know if you see anything unusual. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. You're a good man, Tom. Don't let her make you feel otherwise. For a moment, I had to look away to keep my voice steady. Mrs. Carlson was one of those people you don't realize you need until you're falling apart. After leaving her house, I drove to the east side of Davenport near Duck Creek Park, where I'd found a small furnished apartment available month to month. Nothing fancy, just a one-bedroom with beige carpet, a small balcony, and a view of the parking lot. But it felt like a place where breathing might become possible again. I signed the paperwork, got the keys, and walked through the empty rooms. The air smelled like old paint and new beginnings. I didn't move in yet, not fully, but knowing I had a place to go if everything exploded gave me the courage to keep moving forward. Later that evening, back at the house, I finalized one more step. I called a locksmith. Not to change the locks that moment, but to schedule him for Sunday afternoon while Lynn was still away. Angela had been clear. As long as you're separating households and your belongings aren't being withheld, you're within your rights. So I planned it for the hour after I expected her to leave Caleb's place. I slept lightly that night, listening to the hum of the ceiling fan, waiting for something, anything to feel normal again. But normal was gone. Saturday came and went quietly. Lynn texted me once. Staying an extra night. See you tomorrow evening. No heart emoji, no explanation, nothing. It was almost funny. She believed she had all the control. Sunday afternoon, the locksmith arrived. An older guy in a Carhartt jacket and work boots. He didn't ask questions, just changed the locks, tested the keys, handed me the new set. By the time Lynn's silver sedan pulled into the driveway that evening, everything was ready. But there was one more moment, one that caught me off guard. The driveway camera lit up on my phone, and I watched Lynn step out of her car. She looked carefree, giggling softly at something on her phone. Her hair still had that same messy, playful look I recognized from our younger days. For one aching second, memories hit me so hard my breath caught. Her laughter on our first date, her hair the morning after our wedding, the way she used to lean into me on cold nights. I whispered to myself, some things don't belong to you anymore. And just like that, the ache turned into resolve. She walked up to the door, key in hand, completely unaware that she was about to discover her new life. I put my phone down, sat on the couch, and waited. Calm, quiet, ready. I didn't have to wait long. The first sound was her key scraping against the lock. A pause. Another scrape. Then the sharp click of metal hitting metal as she tried to force it. Tom, she called through the door, her voice tight with confusion. Tom, the lock isn't working? I stayed seated on the couch, hands folded, breathing slow and controlled. Another jangle of keys, a harder twist, then a frustrated grunt. Tom, what the hell, did something break? Nothing broke, Lynn. Not the lock, just the marriage. She tried again, and I could hear the annoyance rising, the same tone she used when the Wi-Fi went out or her phone battery died. Then came the knocking. At first, just 3 quick taps. Then louder. Then fists. Tom opened the door. This isn't funny. I glanced at my phone. The first call was already coming in. Call number 1, I let it ring out. She knocked harder. Call number 2, still angry, still entitled. Tom, pick up, I swear to God. I muted the phone. Call number 3, why are you doing this? Call number 4, seriously, Tom, open the door. Her voice was sharp, commanding, like she still believed she had the authority to tell me what to do. Call number 5, you're being ridiculous. I leaned back, letting the sound of her frustration dissolve into the room like steam off a pot roast. Not out of cruelty, but out of clarity. For once, I wasn't the one scrambling. The knocking stopped. I imagined her standing there on the porch, hands on her hips, looking around to see if any neighbors were watching. Then the tone changed. Call number 6. Okay, look, can we just talk for a second? Please just open the door. Call nurse 7. Her breathing was shakier now. Tom, come on. Don't overreact. Overreact. The word stung even now. I didn't touch the phone. Call number 8. All right, I'm sorry, I yelled. Just open the door so we can fix this. Call number 9. It's late. I'm tired. I just want to come inside. Call number 10. Her voice cracked slightly. Tom, please. The anger had drained out. What replaced it wasn't remorse, it was inconvenience. She wasn't sorry for what she'd done. She was sorry her comfort had been disrupted. Then came the real shift. Call number 11. Tom, please answer. I'm cold. Soft, uneasy, fragile. Call 112. I don't understand what's happening. Did someone break in? Did something happen? I almost laughed at the irony. Call number 13. Are you inside, Tom? Just talk to me. Call the number 14. A small sob slipped through. Please don't do this. I'm scared. Call number 15. Tom, please, I'm begging you. Please pick up. And finally, call number 16. A whisper. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. Please, just let me in. I let the silence linger long enough for her to feel it. Long enough for her to understand that choices have echoes. On the 17th call, I finally picked up. Her breath came out in a rush, like she'd been underwater and just reached the surface. Tom, oh, thank God. What's going on? Why can't I get in the house? Why did you? I cut her off gently. Lynn, I said, my voice steady and calm, you wanted freedom. She froze on the other end. Congratulations. You're free now. Free of me, free of this house, free of everything we built together. There was a long, stunned silence. Then she whispered, What does that mean? But I had already hung up. For the first time in a long time, the house felt peaceful. The next morning at the Scott County Courthouse, I sat outside the family division with my attorney, Angela. The hallway smelled like old paper and floor wax. People shuffled past, some angry, some relieved, all tired. Lynn arrived 10 minutes late wearing the same clothes she'd come home in. Her hair was pulled back in a sloppy ponytail, and her eyes were red from crying or from a night with very little sleep. She stormed toward me. What the hell is going on, Tom? Why are we here? I didn't raise my voice. You'll hear everything in there. Before she could respond, Caleb rounded the corner. And right behind him, his wife holding a small garage door opener in her hand. Her presence hit the hallway like cold air. She walked right up to Caleb, not angry, not hysterical, just eerily calm, and pressed the opener into his palm. I just came to return his garage door opener, she said loud enough for everyone in the hallway to hear. He won't be needing it anymore. Gas, whispers, even Angela raised an eyebrow. Lynn went pale. What is she doing here? I didn't answer. Inside the courtroom, everything unfolded without theatrics. Angela presented documentation, financial records, a timeline, and finally a set of printed text messages between Lynn and Caleb. Not explicit, not vulgar, just damning. From Caleb, this is fun, but don't read too much into it. I'm not looking for anything serious. Let's keep this casual, okay? One by one, the messages laid out the truth. Lynn had gambled her marriage for a man who hadn't even wanted her. Her face collapsed as she read them. Caleb kept staring at the floor, wishing he could melt through it. His wife sat in the back row, arms crossed, silent and dignified. And me, I sat there calm as a winter morning, hands folded, breathing steady. This wasn't revenge. This was reality finally speaking for itself. The judge glanced over the papers and nodded. It seems the separation is well-founded. Lynn looked at me, then really looked at me. Her voice cracked. Tom, please, can we at least talk? You can't just... I already did, Lynn, I said quietly. And the truth was I had. All the talking had been done the moment she laughed at me in our backyard. We left the courthouse separately. She tried to follow me to the parking lot, but I didn't stop. I didn't look back. Some endings don't require fireworks. Some just require a door closing at the right moment. And mine had closed the night she told a table full of people that I didn't get to decide anything. She was wrong. I decided this. I didn't move into the new apartment right away. I spent one last night in the house, not for nostalgia, but for closure. I slept on the couch instead of our bed, listening to the faint hum of the refrigerator, the creaking of old pipes, the soft Iowa wind brushing against the windows. A house can be quiet, but that night the quiet felt honest for the first time in years. In the morning, I brewed one final pot of coffee in that kitchen, the same Hy-Vee blend Lynn used to insist we buy because it was good enough. The smell drifted through the house like a memory I wasn't sure I wanted to keep. Before leaving, I packed the last of my things. In the hall closet, I found an old cardboard box with our anniversary mementos. I sat on the floor, opened it slowly, and sifted through the years. There were photos from a trip to Galena, back when the only thing we wanted from each other was time. There was a keychain she bought me with a tiny wrench charm because she used to laugh that I fixed everything except my own stubbornness. And then there was the mug. White ceramic, slightly chipped. World's okayest husband. She'd given it to me on our 20th anniversary, laughing like it was a harmless joke. And back then, maybe it was. I held it for a long moment. The weight of it felt heavier than it should have. I guess some jokes stopped being funny after a while, I whispered. I set it gently into the donation box. Not vindictive, not angry, just done. When the last of my things were packed, I locked the house behind me, my house, and walked to my truck feeling strangely light. Grief is heavy, but acceptance has its own kind of lift. My apartment wasn't much to look at. Beige carpet, neutral walls, a small balcony overlooking the parking lot. But it was clean, quiet, mine. I spent the first few days settling in, stocking the fridge, hanging a couple of framed river photos, organizing my clothes in the small bedroom closet. Simple tasks that felt like placing stones in a new foundation. I slept better there than I had in years. No tension, no late-night phone buzzing, no pretending. Just stillness. A week passed before Lynn called. I figured it would happen eventually. The screen lit up with her name, and for a moment I considered letting it go to voicemail. But closure deserves a voice, not silence. When I answered, her breath trembled. Tom, can we talk? I didn't sigh, didn't steel myself. I just leaned against the counter and said, go ahead. I made mistakes, she said. I know that. I know I hurt you. But I've been thinking, maybe we can work through this. Maybe we rushed everything. Funny how that word had reappeared only after the consequences did. I miss us, she continued softly. I miss what we had. There was a time I would have clung to those words, a time I would have bent myself backward, trying to salvage something that was already ashes. But that time had passed. Lynn, I said, my voice calm, steady, almost gentle. I didn't leave you. She inhaled sharply. You left the man who would have died for you, the day you laughed at him in front of your friends. Silence, long, heavy, trembling silence. Then a quiet sob. I didn't gloat. I didn't sting her with blame. I just let her feel the truth she'd created. Finally, she whispered, I'm sorry, Tom. I know I said, but that doesn't change anything now. When the call ended, I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel cruel. I felt free, like something tight around my chest had finally loosened. A month later, I found myself walking along the Mississippi riverfront. The evening breeze carried the smell of water and fried food from somewhere down the road. The lights along the walkway blinked on one by one as the sun dipped behind the bridge. I passed the VFW post 828, the same place where Lynn and I had spent countless Fridays over the years. Cars filled the lot. Laughter drifted from the open doors. I could smell the cod from their weekly fish fry, a smell I'd always loved, a smell that had once meant comfort, routine, family. I stopped for a moment, letting the memory settle. That smell, I murmured. Same as the night she told everyone I don't get to decide. I stood there with my hands in my jacket pockets, breathing in the familiar scent. Then I shook my head lightly and kept walking. Smells good, I said to myself, but I'm not hungry anymore. Some things you outgrow without realizing it. Some things you walk past because stopping would pull you back into a life that no longer fits. As the weeks turned into months, I rebuilt my routines. Saturday morning walks through Duck Creek Park, coffee on the balcony while the sun warmed the railings, dinner with Rick once a week, calls with my sister in Des Moines, who reminded me every time that healing doesn't happen overnight, but it does happen. People think revenge is loud. They think it's shouting or breaking things or slamming doors. But real revenge, the kind that leaves a mark, is quiet. It's dignity, it's peace, it's walking away from someone who didn't appreciate you and discovering you like yourself better now than you have in years. One evening, I found myself sitting on the balcony, watching cars pass below the sky, turning pink over Davenport. And I thought about the men and women my age, people who'd stayed longer than they should have, who'd loved harder than they were loved, back who'd been laughed at, dismissed, or taken for granted. People like me. And maybe people like you. So if you've ever had to choose peace over pain, if you've ever had to walk away from someone who stopped seeing your worth, I hope my story gives you a little strength tonight. And if it did, well, feel free to share it or stick around for the next one. We all heal a little faster when we're not alone.